If you are an advanced learner of English or simply curious about idioms, their meanings and origins, it may help to truly understand what an idiom is. So, what is an idiom? Before I begin, I should point out that not all experts agree on just how to precisely define an idiom or on when something should be called an idiom or not. However, for most of us, this shouldn't matter as long as we understand the basics. An idiom is an expression. An expression is a significant word or phrase used to convey an idea. Did I say word? Yes. Contrary to popular belief, a single word can be an idiom. For example, if I said, "You're a real lifesaver," am I literally saying you saved my life? No, lifesaver is an idiom. What I really mean is you did me a big favor. But it's true that an idiom is usually a phrase. A phrase is a group of words forming a syntactical unit. In other words, it's a group of words that act together to convey an idea or meaning, but which are not themselves a sentence or complete clause. Unlike other phrases, though, an idiom behaves more like a word. And once in a while, like I said, a single word is used as an idiom. Also, unlike other phrases, the meaning of an idiom is not always easy to tell based on the words used. They mean something different than they appear to mean. Now, I've noticed that many idiom teachers treat learners of English as if they are new to idioms. You are not new to idioms. Every language has its own idioms. And some idioms are similar across languages. I said that idioms don't mean what they appear to mean. That's because idioms are almost always figurative, or in other words, metaphorical. What if I said, "You hit the nail on the head"? You might think, I don't even have a hammer. Well, I don't mean it literally. Despite these confusing figurative meanings, as a native speaker, you use idioms every day just like you use words. You don't have to think about them. They just roll off your tongue. You know what they mean just as you know what the words of your language mean. But idioms in other languages which you did not grow up speaking can seem like complete nonsense. So much of what we say relies on grammatical rules. When speaking or writing, we make choices based on a large number of rules, resulting in an astounding number of different word combinations. Idioms don't abide by these rules. They change everything. They are pre-constructed, or at least partially pre-constructed, and set, and they resist being analyzed by examining their parts. And some idioms are more limited than other types of expressions in how they can be used. They are unitaskers. Words cannot be substituted, and tenses cannot be changed, for example, without changing the meaning. An example often given is the idiom, "kick the bucket." You cannot say the bucket was kicked and have it mean the same thing. These types of idioms are called frozen idioms. Now, not all idioms are frozen idioms, and I'll get more into that a little later. Despite what you've probably been led to believe, idioms are not always completely unanalyzable. As a matter of fact, this is one reason I try to include the source or origins of the idioms in my videos, and as far as I know, I'm the only channel who tries to do this for every single idiom I discuss. If I don't know the origin, I try to discuss the allusion. What does the idiom allude to? What's the central metaphor? Understanding the origin helps you to analyze the idiom, which helps you to remember the meaning and to learn to use it correctly. As opposed to being frozen, many idioms are at least partially compositional, and certain words can be changed with the idiom still being understood. For example, to open a can of worms means to do something that makes things more complicated than they were before, thus giving you more problems than you would have had if you had left things as they were. We can understand the can of worms as corresponding to all the other problems. and opening as corresponding to the action that brought about all these other problems. We might even say open the proverbial can of worms, thus underscoring the metaphor and calling attention to the fact that can of worms means the same thing as many problems. I could even use only part of the idiom, leave out the open, and say that's a real can of worms, and be understood by native speakers. So idioms are not so straightforward and meaningless as many sources lead us to believe. The idea that they are nonsensical word jumbles that have been assigned arbitrary meanings is certainly not true. When you are learning idioms, keep in mind that they can be very context dependent. In fact, many idioms are only used in certain situations, and this is very important. And the situations they are used in can give us clues to their analysis. For example, we've already seen that the idiom can of worms would be used in a situation in which one is dealing with a problem or set of problems. Likewise, we would never have to break the ice with our best friend. This idiom would only be used in regards to social tension or unease. And the words that surround idioms are part of that context. If I say, I'm not ready to stop working, I'm not an old man, yet they want to put me out to pasture. You may understand that being put out to pasture has something to do with growing older and retiring. And if you find out that put out to pasture has a literal meaning for cows, you may be able to put all this information together and figure out the meaning of the idiom. Idioms are also sometimes confused with aphorisms. Aphorisms are short sayings which convey, or attempt to convey, a general truth. They are sometimes called proverbs. Idioms can often behave like aphorisms, and aphorisms can sometimes behave like idioms. Idioms can also be slang. Let's talk about idioms versus slang in a little more detail. Because this is a question that often comes up. What is the difference between idioms and slang? This makes sense because when you look at enough idioms, they seem similar to what most of us would call slang. So is there a difference at all? Let's call a spade a spade. In fact, there's not really a succinct difference. Although, as I stated, there is not one universally accepted definition of idiom, a fairly standard definition is two or more words used together as a unit that has a special meaning not derived from the meanings of the words separately. The only difference between slang and any other commonly used parts of the language is that slang is not yet, and may never be, commonly used by all speakers of the language. Here is how the Oxford English Dictionary defines it: a type of language consisting of words and phrases that are regarded as very informal and are more common in speech than writing, and are typically restricted to a particular context or group of people. Once a slang term or phrase is widely accepted into the culture and begins to be used by everyone rather than by certain groups, it is no longer slang. Many idioms are used in formal books, and many informal idioms are used in everyday conversation. However, some idioms are slang phrases. These may be considered rude, annoying, uncouth, etc., but they are still idioms. Why should it be an idiom if I say it's raining cats and dogs, but slang if I say that's such a cop-out? As common as the idiom cop-out actually is, you won't hear people of all ages and walks of life saying it, but anyone might say it's raining cats and dogs to refer to a heavy downpour. Still, both are idioms regardless. To keep it simple, just remember that not all slang phrases are idioms, and not all idioms are different than slang. For that matter, a catchphrase may well be an idiom. We say read my lips to mean listen to what I'm saying very closely. But it's also a catchphrase often used mockingly and associated with President George H.W. Bush, who said it during his campaign, "Read my lips, no new taxes." Now we need to discuss idioms versus cliches. Idioms are used like words. Therefore, some are heard so often they become cliches. For example, I used a cliche before, call a spade a spade. This phrase is often considered hackneyed, perhaps because it has been used in so many dime detective novels. It fits the definition of an idiom quite well though. Now, after watching this video, you may not know idioms backwards and forwards, but you're certainly learning the ropes. I just used 2 idioms in a row. Did you recognize them? Can you figure out what they mean based on the context? Let me know in the comments below. Before I put this video to bed, that's an idiom, there are a few things I want to personally convey to you. If you are an ESL student, you certainly face many challenges in learning English idioms. However, the more important goal is to learn to understand them so that you can keep from being bewildered by native speakers and you can respond appropriately even if you do not use an idiom in response. Many sources pretend as if you absolutely must learn to use all the idioms, that they are used as often as regular words. This is a gross exaggeration. It's just not true, not even close. Learning to use as many idioms as you can correctly will make you sound like a more natural speaker, but you will not sound odd or robotic all the time if you fail to use them. And if you're studying for a test, well, I hope my videos help. So if you want help learning English idioms backwards and forwards, Idioms Online is the channel for you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. And thank you so much for watching.